later until, the tail end of the 70s that we really got into the music and were able to hear it because it was hard to hear until we discovered Rodney and the Rock on K-Rock. And that's where we heard all the local bands. That's where we first heard Black Flag, Red Cross, the Saccharine Trust, the Minutemen, and a host of others. So that really sort of pulled us into what was happening locally at the time. So that's my story.
I think it was, I was really acutely aware that I'd missed all the good music, and that music when I was like 14 was pretty bad. And I was camping with my parents at Big Bear. We went to like the Rite Aid or whatever it was called back then, and they had the Crew magazine. We put out a paperback book, which is a compilation of reviews. And I'm reading about like the Velvet Underground and the Stooges and the MC5, and I'm like, this sounds like amazing. And I went to the record store, and like I couldn't find any of it for like a year. And then when the Sex Pistols' first album came out, the newspapers were all freaking out, like, it's the end of the world, the teenagers they're wrong. And people were really hysterical over that, so I was interested in that too. And then Dr. Demento played the Sex Pistols and the Ramones, and then I started listening to Rodney, because, he played the Sex Pistols and the Ramones.
My turn? Well, when I was a sophomore in high school, my freshman year, I went to Costa, man. Yeah. And then they kicked me out. So they said, Des, you have to go to Redondo where the real people go. So I had a friend named Mary Mulholland. She had a blonde David Bowie haircut. We used to listen to like David Bowie, Lou Reed, rock and roll stuff too, Zeppelin, whatever, Alice fucking Cooper, God bless him. So I used to go over to her house, to school at Redondo, and go over to her house. I ditched the last 2 classes, go over to her house. She goes, come over. I went to Music Plus, which used to be on 8th Street and PCH. Music Plus, where we bought a lot of rock and roll and punk rock records. Glitter, Bowie, those type of things. And she goes, come over. I went shopping, and we'll drink our dad's beer. Her dad's beer. And listen to 3 records that she bought. And so she bought 3 records. She bought the Runaways, Queens of Noise, which is like the second record. Third record, the second record was Rush, 2112. And then the Ramones. And we had been reading about the Ramones, and we were like, what are they like, Santana? What the hell is this? I think Blondie said the same thing. She goes, what's the Ramones? Santana? Anyway, a Latin band. So she was like, I got it. So we listened to Rush, 2112, the first side, and we go, okay, that's Rush. And whatever. And I like some prog music, but they're good, but if you like that shit, but good musicians. Runaways, listen, Queens of Noise, rocking, drinking her dad's beer. Then she puts on the Ramones.
First album.
First record. And we're like, listen to the first side, and we're like, do it again. We listened to it like 5 times. Just the first side. And I go, can we listen to the second side? She goes, no, I have to eat dinner. We'll do that another time. 2 months, we just listened to side 1. And then all of a sudden, I brought some beer over because I had like $5, and I brought some beer over. And I go, Okay, side one, no, today's the bad side. So, as far as punk rock is concerned, I think I was listening to alternative stuff before that. I had heard the Stooges, I had heard the New York Dolls, and I was into like Frank Zappa and Captain Beefheart and stuff like that already. But that Ramones record.
Thank you. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to go and ask questions to, we'll start with Des and go down, and then I'm going to finish with some more perspective questions in terms of retrospective. And I think that should hopefully educate people, have some fun, tell some good stories, and we got some great storytellers. So Des, what was your first experience in the punk rock scene?
You mean what was my first punk rock gig?
Your first punk rock gig, the first time you kind of light bulb went off, and it's like, I like this.
It was kind of like meeting me and Ron Reyes, meeting like Black Flag. And I had been to gigs before that. I used to have a group of friends from Hermosa that we, sometimes it was jabbing. I drive us all the way up to Hollywood to go see the Dills or her dad's truck, which only drove like 40 miles an hour. And but we were all packed in the back with beers. And like it was the days where it was a pickup truck. So it was the days where you could ride in the back of a pickup. And everybody's drinking. It was crazy. So my first punk rock gig. No, it's more like the Whiskey a Go-Go, or seeing like Johnny Thunders fall over at the Whiskey. Yeah. It was the second show. The first show we played great, but they used to clear people out at the Whiskey. And then I didn't have $5 to see the second show, so I went in the bathroom, stood on the toilet. And then when they let people out and started letting people in, I would jump down and see the second show. First show, he was amazing. Johnny Thunders ripped. He must have got his pills or his drugs or whatever, because the next gig, same night, he played like 1.5.
Everyone knows how to see your second set.
Yeah, it was like he came out, he fell, and they took him to the hospital. And I go, well, that's punk rock, but I know what not to do. I mean, I've had my experiences in drugs, but not that. Anyway, I mean, that was pretty punk. Your turn.
So, yeah, let's just go down. I have more specific questions for the individuals. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a good question for everybody.
Okay, so for me, like when I heard Dr. Demento play Blitzkrieg Bop and God Save the Queen back to back, I was like, fuck, this is the best. So like the next day I started instantly just running around Hermosa Beach looking for people who looked like they might like this kind of music. Like I saw Des at Music Plus buying a Mumps single, and I followed him home. But I didn't talk to him, I met him. And then there was a girl who lived around the corner from me who had every punk record that existed up to that point. Like, I'm not even kidding, it was insane, so I just go to her house every day. But it took 6 months to get a ride to a show. 6 months. So in July of 1978, I got to see the Screamers, the Weirdos, the Controllers, and Crime at the Stardust Ballroom. And that was like, okay, this is what I'm doing with the rest of my life. And my parents were fucking thrilled.
Jordan and I were kids in Santa Monica who, were 16-year-old kids, and we didn't drive yet. I don't think I even drove until I was 19. It's just putting everything off as,
I still don't drive.
as long as possible, yeah. Yeah. You're just like the dude in Repo Man does. Anyway, so, we would take the bus to Westwood, and that's what kids from Santa Monica did. You could get on the Big Blue bus and go to Westwood. And there was this clothing store called the Village News, and they would clear the racks out after hours, and bands would come in and play, like Madness or the more new wave type stuff. But whatever, 79. Yeah, and I mean, we had not ventured into Hollywood yet. Hollywood was like this faraway, scary place, and for our perspective at the time, being young kids, in the land of Three's Company. Yeah, we saw the Zippers and Berlin and stuff like that. But it wasn't really punk. It was as close as we could get to punk. This was before we discovered you could take an RTD bus all the way up into Hollywood to go to Starwood to see shows, which we started doing in late 79, early 1980. And we saw bands like the Suburban Lawns and the Middle Class and the Dickies and the Go-Go's. I saw the Go-Go's at the Whiskey. Actually, that might have been the first real, LA punk band scene show that we saw. This was years before they were signed, and I think they had that one Stiff single.
Did you wear take-off?
No, I had it's totally we hadn't cut our hair yet, so our hair was still kind of long, and I had the fucking wraparound Devo glasses because we were Devo obsessives. And, that Devo really sort of led us to this music. It's funny because they came out here to live at the time from Ohio. But that band led us to all the LA stuff. So they were sort of like the gateway drug. And, along with Talking Heads, Ramones, Patti Smith. No, we didn't see them until a couple years later. But I went and saw Devo at the Santa Monica Civic in 1979, and that show was really because the Santa Monica Civic was really kind of a storied venue in our town.
Clash played there.
Clash, Bowie, Sony. It was just, and to us at the time, that was huge. The hugest space you can go to, because I never went to the Forum as a kid. I never got to see the Led Zeppelins and the Pink Floyds and all the bands that, I was just a little too young and also didn't have any older siblings or any older kids in the neighborhood to drive to the Forum, which wasn't far away. But, I never had that experience. So having an experience in the Santa Monica Civic was huge to me at the time. And then a year or two later, who should be playing the Civic on the day we graduated from high school, Santa Monica High School, June 1981? Black Flag, DOA, The Adolescents, and the Minutemen opening in that order. Jazz was singing. And this was at a time when the Six Pack single had just come out, and we were really into that record. Not just the A side, the B side.
And Pat Smear played in the Adolescents.
Did he play at that show?
At that show.
I thought that was a little, maybe a little later, but I don't know, maybe. I remember it was Rick and Casey and it was the Blue Album lineup of the Adolescents.
The later show where we.
Pat joined a year later. I remember that happened. But this was we had Blue Album, Adolescents, Minutemen opening. The sun was still up. Minutemen go on stage, and punk was just throwing beer balls at them, cursing at them, flipping them off, spitting on them. And we're up front, and we were really clued into the Minutemen before they even had their first single out. They put out a compilation called Cracks in the Sidewalk, which had Minutemen, Saccharine Trust, Black Flag, Artless Entanglements, which was Spot on the B-side. A couple other weirdo Pedro bands. Greg Hurley's band, what was his band? Slivers?
Yeah, Slivers.
I don't think it was the Slivers on that, but it was one of those Pedro sort of weirdo art bands. So we would just like listen to that Minutemen track 9:30 May 2nd and just kind of like freak out. So we were really into the Minutemen, and I didn't understand why these bald-headed Huntington Beach types were flipping them off. But previous to that, we had an encounter with these bald-headed asshole Huntington Beach punkers at the X Blasters Gear Santa Monica Civic, October 1980. Again, another gig in our hometown at that venue. So we were there, and after during the show, we just kept getting harassed by the HBs because of our hair. And I remember Jennifer, Jordan's sister, and I were sitting out on the lawn after the gig, and some big HB comes up and just puts a big wad of gum in her hair. And we're like, yeah, welcome to punk. So that was our first encounter with that kind of gang type mentality. But anyways.
Let me add one other, because I guess all of our firsts were same thing. The other one was the first club show. So in between that, our graduation party, which was Black Flag at Civic, and our kind of first big concert punker gig, which was that X Blasters gig at the Santa Monica Civic in October. After we had decided, after listening to some shoebox punk compilation tapes, we had decided to start We Got Power magazine with my sister Dave and another dude, Alan Gilbert. Alan, Dave, and I decided to drive down on a Tuesday night to the Cuckoo's Nest in Costa Mesa, California, to see, it was the Descendants, Minutemen, Red Cross, and Saccharine Trust. Tuesday night, there's like maybe 15 people there, and we just kind of go in and sit at the corner. Like, Cuckoo's Nest had, like, on the weekends, heavy shows, like TSOL, all these crazy rager shows, Social Distortion, plus the Iggy Pops and the Ramones coming through there. But this was not that. This was, more or less SST night, although Red Cross went on SST. So we're just sitting there watching this crazy show. Like, for example, the Minutemen are playing, and there's this guy, Mugger, who was ended up kind of being the accountant for SST, and he played in this infamous band called the Nig Heist. But Mugger's yelling, and there's like nobody in the stage here, but you can hear everything. He's yelling, D-Boom! D-Boom, take a shit on stage! It's like, what? And then, but the Minutemen were great, of course, they go and do their thing. And then Red Cross comes on, and Steve and Jeff, they get into a fight. Like, well, I remember the part where like Jeff kind of turned his back to Steve and bent over, and then Steve kicked him in the ass. Like, or maybe it was the other way around. It was like, wow, this is crazy. And then of course St. Saccharine, Earl, Boltzmann. And then the Descendants, like Milo, he's kind of just hanging out there. It was amazing. And then Tuesday, then we drive back to Santa Monica. So that was another aspect, that club show.
We saw so many Descendants shows early on, and they had a hard time filling a small club at the time. Like they were lucky if 20 people were there, and those shows were just so insane, and they were so great. They had yet to put out Milo Goes to College. I think it was right, maybe even before they put out that Fat EP, which really kind of was a change in sound for them, because they had one single before that was more akin to The Last, which is another South Bay band, the Nolte Brothers. They were really influential to the Descendants in making Billy start a band. But Billy didn't start a band?
Frank had songs and the name before he even met Bill.
Okay, well then Bill moved in and took over. Yeah. So next question.
Moderator, referee, get in here.
So So I mean, now I'm going to have some more pointed questions, and this is for Des.
Ouch.
And you know what I love, I think here is your first experience with Black Flag and how you got into the band, kind of the journey from meeting Chuck on Pier Avenue to singing in the band.
Well, me and Ron made friends with them, Ron Reyes. And I was living in Dondo. That's for all the Maricosta people, Dondo. And yeah, I know you are. But the, what was the question? It was friends. And they asked me, it was really funny because I never sang before. I sang to myself, but I was always a guitar player. And after I had met them, and they had Keith and Ron, me and Ron were, it was always like Des and Ron, you know. And we'd hang out at the church, and we had a band in my garage, me and Ron, called the Happy Tampons. But we thought after a while that it wouldn't make any sense. You know, girls would not like us, so we called ourselves the Kissable Cuties. We thought that would be cool, but we were all punk rock, and he had like a Levi jacket, white one, and he would just write the Dills, Screamers, Sex Pistols, Clash, 999, you know, like a cheap Puerto Rican punk rock jacket. And it was cool, and we became friends, and we met those guys. And then Keith quit the band, Ron joined for about 6 months. He quit at the, not the Fleetwood?
Fleetwood, yeah.
And I had been friends with them for about a year or two. They asked me because when they were playing, when Keith was in the band especially, I'd be up front singing all the lyrics. I had a skateboard, whatever.
You lived on the Strand.
Where?
You lived in Dondo.
I lived where? I'm from nowhere. So they said, we want you to be in the band. And I go, well, I play guitar. You need a singer. Well, we want you to sing. I go, why? Because at every show you sing all of our tunes and you have the energy. I go, fuck you. Okay, I'll do it. And it was a task. I enjoyed it. I'd rather play fucking guitar.
So how did you get to be, so you ended up playing guitar, you know, the Flying Wishes version on the...
I was unhappy. I was unhappy. I didn't have the ego to be a lead singer.
So they let you play.
And then they kept me in the band. And then when I finally said to them, I don't want to be, I want to start my own music, they let me go as Peaceful. And I think I'm the first person to ever leave that band. And amicably, peaceful.
What was, Des, what was your first show singing in the band?
At the church. So I had been in the band a week. And, well, there's a whole story. You really want to hear this?
It depends on,
I'll try to do the Reader's Digest. So it was the first ever gig I sang with the band. What had happened was the city of Hermosa Beach was hassling them and didn't understand. They thought it was like drug addicts. Meanwhile, the hippie upstairs who did like stained glass windows was selling all the coke in Hermosa Beach in the world. You know, he was the big drug addict, not us. We were just kids trying to get a beer. And we decided we had a list of people that were a mailing list. And it was about 600 people, and about 300 were kids from Orange County. And there were all those Nazi HB, Huntington Beach kids, Fullerton. Now, again, bands like the Adolescents, even Social B, TSOL was a gang before it was a band.
Well, they were Vicious Circle.
Vicious Circle, it was a gang. Anyway, so we decided to fuck the police, Hermosa police. And we invited all these violent Huntington, Orange County kids to this gig with me. I wore a shirt. I had like David Bowie-ish Sid Vicious, but it was dyed like red. I had a Quaalude shirt. I got the American flag bell bottoms that went all the way out to here. And like platform shoes, and we played at the altar of the church. Is there any pictures of the church? Oh, maybe over there. You know, over there on, what's that? Manhattan Avenue over there. And we played, and I sang through a Marshall. And all these kids were going, who's this new singer and what's with the hippie pants and stuff? Right? But the thing is, if you read the Easy Reader, they said Hermosa Beach kids Black Flag out. No, we planned it. We already had a place in Torrance. And then we left from that show with the cops, and we got in our van and went to San Francisco and played, and then we went to Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver and played. The first 2 weeks, I was in that band.
And what happened with the, when...
I didn't get arrested.
No, at the church, when things went sideways, there was a riot, basically.
Yeah, we all piled in the Chuck's van around back of the church, that alley. And he said, we're off. They had moved all their stuff to Torrance already. We planned that riot to go like this to the Hermosa police.
So
because they were hassling us. Look, there were people living there. It was wrong, you know, but we were kids. We were rebels. We were doing whatever we were doing how we wanted to do.
So let's stick to the riot theme, because one thing that was synonymous with Black Flag gigs were riots. Went through a few of them, but are there any? You told me a story about the infamous riot on Sunset Boulevard at the Whiskey, and you were standing, looking out the window, and you saw a kid with a beer bottle, and then you told me it's over.
Well, if we're going to repeat that, yeah, I did. We were playing. It was the Minutemen, DOA, and us at the Whiskey. When the riot happened, help me out, Dave. Was it the Minutemen opening? It might have been 2 minutes. You're right. It was DOA and us, and of course at the Whiskey you played twice a night because they want to make money because it's the mafia. And so they clear everybody out, and we did 2 shows. Well, we did our first show, I was singing, and then go upstairs, and I don't know if you've ever been to the backstage of the Whiskey A Go-Go, but it's right on the corner, the Whiskey. And so if you go to the backstage, which is upstairs, there's double windows that. What's the cross street, Dave, to the Whiskey? Clark and Sunset. So you can see both ways, and I could see, and it looked like slow motion. There was already trouble because that's when we decided that we should play like the Santa Monica Civic, because 2 shows, that's 1,000 people. Then there was like 3,000 people on this fucking street. So, and they couldn't get in. So there was this big commotion. It's like, this is gonna be the riot on Sunset Strip Part 2. It was, because when I was upstairs after the first show, I could see this door, and cops were hassling these punkers, and I could see this one kid pick up a beer bottle and just chuck it. And to me, it was like, don't do it, don't fucking. And it was like slow motion to me. I wasn't on LSD, okay? I wasn't on drugs or nothing. I was like, just play the show. And I go, oh fuck. And I see him get the cop who was wearing a helmet in the head, and then all the cops with the helmets just like started beating people down. You know? And I go, well, I don't think there's going to be a second show. I don't think there was a second show.
No. I remember, because I was there, I remember we were driving from the show, and just all of a sudden it rained beer bottles. And then it made the 11 o'clock news. There was, it was something that I know my parents did not like me being involved in.
Well, look at you now.
But one question that, because in the South Bay, there was one club that was synonymous with insanity, and it's one of the regrets of my life of not being invited by Mike Theodore and his brother, but it's Fleetwood. And so this is also for Janet, because you were the two that, so tell us your experiences of the Fleetwood, which was on, it was on Cattle
by the Harbor.
Yeah.
And it was formerly like a smokestack or something. And they had metal bands, and they had Dawkin every week. And they were rocking with Dawkin. It was, I don't really feel like you missed anything, because it was just like, I remember being upstairs, like looking down, and there's like 3 or 4 like massive brawls happening at the same time. Like people just went there, and like people came down from Hollywood to see the bands, and then people came up from Huntington Beach just to like start shit and fight. And it was just like swirling. It wasn't even like what you would call a pit. It was just people like fighting. And the bouncers, of course, hated all the customers. It was like, the parking lot was patrolled by like literal angry Samoans, like gangbangers from like Wilmington and stuff, and they're like coming to beat up punk rock freaks, and yeah, it was just basically just fighting and some music, and it was like a big barn-like thing, and it was, I mean, I saw some great bands there, but mostly I just remember that you had to just watch yourself every second. Like I still have literal PTSD from going to those shows, because you couldn't drop your guard for 1 second, or you just get clocked in the head by some asshole from HB. So yeah, man, Fleetwood, woo!
Yes.
Okay. What do you want
Just tell us about your experiences there, and any stories, because I think.
Well, the Fleetwood, right now there's like
It's a hotel.
A hotel, the whole block doesn't exist anymore. But the Fleetwood was, I can tell you the story about when Ron Reyes quit the band. It was at the Fleetwood. That would be kind of, and all due respect to Ron, for years I didn't know why he did it. He quit on stage. But it was because of these HBs that she was Huntington Beach people. Baldies. And they kind of screwed up his girlfriend while he was on stage, and he quit on stage. But my experience when that happened was Ron being a very good friend of mine, and I thought he was really good at Black Flag, but I didn't think he was Keith. And then we had this friendship, and I didn't go to very many shows. I went to like 1 or 2 shows with him. With Keith Morris, I went to every show, every practice, you know. So I went to the show with a bunch of friends of mine. I just finished going to Redondo, and I was with Mars, Maury Fulton. She went to one of my punk rock friends from Maricosta days. Cadena. It's like Cadena. Anyway, so I'm making fun of her. So we went. We said, we're going to go see Ron sing. And I had seen him sing with Black Flag, and it was cool, but it wasn't the same. And he was my best friend, but you know, I had to tell him that. Anyway, you know, that's deep, man. That's very deep. But anyway, went to go see him, and he, after like 2 or 3 songs, he quit the band. But at the time, there was this big Orange County violent crowd coming down to the South Bay and just fucking shit up. I mean, in the old days, surfers used to want to piss on punks. Then the surfers and then the skateboarders and everybody became punks. Here, there, they were the same way, but they became punks and they became like this. Kind of like a fucking president. Yeah, you know, there was like, the pogo didn't exist anymore. It was more like black guys. Anyway, so we went to go see them. Excuse me. We didn't want to hang out in the crowd. There was a place at the Fleetwood. It used to be a theater also. They used to have bands, and they used to have like lights. What do they call that? You're in the cinema.
Spotlights?
Spotlight, you know, like a roof that would shine across the spotlight. And me and Mars went upstairs and we're watching this show, and he sings like 3 songs and he goes, fuck this shit. Throws the mic down. Goes in the crowd, grabs his girl, and leaves. And me and Mars are going, do you know Maury Fulton? Did you know her? No. Oh, yeah, Mary the Rat. Anyway, so he leaves. So Black Flag's up there. And there were like 400 kids. And they say,
Can we get the Reader's Digest version, because we do want to get on with...
all right, so...
Thank you.
So, they start playing Louie Louie for about an hour. Kind of like my monologue right here.
So now we're going to go to Janet, and question was, what was it like growing up in Hermosa Beach?
guess it depends on like who you were and what you were into. It for me, I was like a bookworm. I was a nerd. I wore glasses and I liked to read books and stuff. So it was pretty alienating until I I started this stuff, but like not really like go out and get pounded in the shore break for a couple hours after school and when it's all blown out and be like, I thirst. But no, I just was kind of kept to myself and was a weirdo, and then until I found punk rock, and then I like aggressively chased down every single person that looked like a punk until I had some friends, and then started playing. But like I knew since I was 5 I wanted to be in a band, so like I was on a mission. But no, it's obviously a nice place, but people were really like, there was a bumper sticker that there used to be like, there's no life east of Sepulveda. Like, people had this attitude that somehow like, because their parents bought a house here, they were somehow like better than other people, and it was just, I don't know, it's kind of like a weird small town vibe, but also kind of pretentious. I don't know, I wasn't a fan, I'm sorry.
So one thing is there's an interesting connection with Dave in your filmmaking and Janet's acting career. And I believe it was so maybe you can talk about, Dave, your experience and why you got into filmmaking and how that influenced you, your punk rock experience influenced your filmmaking, and then your connection
It
with
was
Janet.
actually the other way around, because I had been making films since I was 11 years old, before I got into music, before I got into punk. What happened was, when I got really involved in the music scene, I got a great subject to document and to learn and hone my skills as a documentarian, because it was a pretty vast, rich, scene, and a lot to cover, and a lot of, and I always was like focusing on the people as well. That seemed to be just as interesting to me as the music and the bands. So, to answer your question, if punk influenced my filmmaking, well, eventually the two really kind of just became intertwined for me, music and film. So, and music it was sort of a battle going back and forth, like, am I going to be playing music in bands and touring, or am I going to be focusing on filmmaking? So I sort of was scatterbrained throughout the 80s, doing both. So it was kind of a mishmash of things going on at once.
Hey, so you shot all your stuff in Super 8, and you first shot your Super 8 of Janet, right? Was that on the Santa Monica Pier?
Well, yeah, I made the Slog movie, shot it in 81, 82, which was sort of yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, at that point in time, by 82, there was a whole new kind of crop of kids on the scene. And again, it was sort of like these bands that they couldn't decide whether or not they were bands, or they were gangs, or they were both. Or they started as gangs and became bands. I'm talking about the Circle Ones and the Suicidal Tendencies. Sort of, like as you mentioned before, TSOL. Sort of just these kids that were really kind of aping, kind of like cholo culture in a way. Like, yeah. No, I mean just the gang kind of mentality. Like it was somewhere between. Right, right. They were really kind of copying the whole cholo thing, really. But yeah, and a lot of them were not Latino. A lot of them were, white boys. But there were also plenty of mixed race people involved. So at that point in time, that was like, it had gone from the Vicious Circle gang to the Suicidal Tendencies gang. And early on, in 82, Red Cross were playing a lot of shows with Suicidal Tendencies, and it was really kind of a mixed two bands that maybe shouldn't have been on the same stage at the same time, but they were. And the Suicidal Tendencies fans really sort of took umbrage to Red Cross.
No, that was the first show where Jeff and Steve showed up with like spandex pants and thrift store platform shoes. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And like, that was their new direction. And we went out there and Suicidal Tendencies kids were like, what the fuck? And they went and bought a big bag of kiwi fruit. So if you see Dave's movie, there's all these little black specks flying around. It's fruit.
Permanent fruit at the band. Yeah, it sort of got to the point where it was just like covered in fruit mulch and trying to play. And that was Red Cross on the Santa Monica Pier in 1982. But I mean, that sort of really led to the Love Dolls film, which I did the next year. I started shooting that in 83. Pretty much shot that movie throughout 1983. And at that point in time, my focus went from the Fanzine and playing in the band, Sympathy 4 that I was in at the time. That band was falling apart, so I had a lot more focus back to film. And so my answer to all of what was going on in my life became Desperate Teenage Love Dolls. And of course, when I was casting the film, I knew right away that Janet had a place in the cast, and I just think I asked you. I don't even remember.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't remember how it worked out, but it was just like we were friends, and
The Love Dolls needed a drummer.
Yeah, and the fictitious band eventually became a real band a couple of years later. That's a whole other story. So I hope that answered your question.
And maybe expand on that in terms of, because you were in Santa Monica, and again, the theme today is Tales from Hermosa Beach.
It's still similar in the sense that we were beach community towns, although Santa Monica was more city-like in a way.
Here we are, if you guys are
Yeah.
Santa Monica was more like, the opening of Three's Company.
The other thing is there were buses that ran 24/7 down like Wilshire and Santa Monica Boulevard. So you could kind of go from downtown to Santa Monica to the beach, right? The South Bay, and we can debate that, what towns comprise the South Bay, was a little more isolated. So that's why I kind of like, having lived in Hermosa and Santa Monica, kind of like Santa Monica a little better because it had that city mix to it. Of course, to some that's correct.
So
Sorry,
now,
what was your question?
it was just your experience of being down here, and did you film down here?
We came down here for shows, and also our friends lived here. We would come down here and hang out. Yeah, there was a Red Cross riot at the Cove Theater, yeah.
Let's stick on that point there.
Say that again.
I threw a 2x4 at the promoter.
What made you do that?
Jordan,
I started. So the Cove Theater at that point had been divided into two separate theaters, and the band showed up to play. And
well, Janet, can you just maybe give a little bit more history of the Cove Theater? Because a lot of people who were from here, lived here, we went there to see surf movies, and
Song Remains the Same,
by Led
Rocky
Zeppelin,
Horror
and-
Picture Show, and
and
Monty Python.
we would ride our bikes down there, but so
It was the happening. It was called the Bijou for years. You might know it as the Bijou, but yeah, it was like a really happening, like really grubby little theater where everybody would go to smoke weed and drink and watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Skater Dater.
And there's Dezo playing.
I forgot what we're talking about now. Oh yeah, so anyway, they decided to have bands there. They'd had bands a couple times. I think the Alley Cats and the Zippers played there, and nothing bad happened. So this guy Barry Gott, who was some hippie guy, he decided I'm gonna have a punk rock show, and I guess he thought that it was gonna be like a costume party, and the local kids were gonna come wear punk costumes, and so like when actual punk rockers showed up, he was really bummed out, and he decided that he was going to put two bands on each side and charge separate admission. And when the bands found out, they're like, no, we're not doing that. And then he says, okay, well, everyone leave. And everyone's like, we're not doing that either. So he turned a fire hose on the crowd. And then, you know, I threw a 2x4 at him, and then people were just throwing things, and then I don't know, a bunch of shit happened outside. I just grabbed my drums and ran away. But it was quite the scandal.
And just on your, because you mentioned drums and you were a drummer,
Yeah.
and the bands that we knew you were in with Disposals and Red Cross.
Yeah.
And how did you get into playing drums? I mean, was that something you did in high
No,
school or after?
I wanted to be in a band, but I was trying to learn bass, and I would go over to Des and Ron would show me like Buzzcock songs on the bass and stuff. So like, I'm gonna be a bass player. But everybody wanted to be a bass player, and everyone needed a drummer. And so the Disposals had a really not very good drummer. And so if you ever read that book, California Hardcore, and it talks about the Disposals sounding like the Shags, that wasn't me. So, I fucking So we were at the church, and Jeff McDonald had figured out some drum beats by like the first Ramones album. You can turn it all the way to the right or left and hear bass and drums or guitar and vocals. So he had figured out some drums. So he showed me on this drum set that was there, and I could keep a beat. So like, hey, you're in. And then like a month later, we're playing shows. Like D-Boon got us a show at a biker bar in San Pedro. It was.
That was Red Cross. That's how you got into Red Cross.
No, that's how I got into Disposals. And then I was just, you know, I did that, and then I was in a band called the Omelets from Orange County, who were like, they were super insane. OC Weekly did a whole cover story on them a few years ago, but they were, I don't know, I don't want to digress, but I think I got into Red Cross because I had a truck, I had a drum set, and I knew the songs. I was just there. So yeah, it wasn't because I was like the next John Bonham or something. Jannable.
So maybe give a little bit of history of Jordan and Dave is We Got Power. What was the motivation? How did you? Because it was a very DIY, which was kind of the theme of a lot of the fanzines. Because for me, it was flip side was kind of the Bible or the gold standard. And so tell us a bit about what motivated you. I know there's a very interesting story that involves Circle One. So maybe tell everybody about We Got Power.
This is 45 years old and it looks brand new. The difference between We Got Power and a lot of the punk rock fanzines was it was printed on high quality paper. Tell us how that happened.
And that happened because, we were doing an interview of some bands that we were into for the first issue. We happened to interview a band called Circle One from Pico Rivera with a very enigmatic lead singer by the name of John Macias. Big, tough, muscle guy, but actually very nice guy. And as it turns out, while we were doing the interview, we found out that his father owned a print shop in Koreatown. So he introduced us to his dad, and we were able, and his dad was just, we didn't have to negotiate a lot. He just basically hooked us up. Dave would deliver the galleys, and the stuff got shot, and he would get whatever extra good paper was laying around. He was able to do that. We were able to pull off 5 issues with that. But bringing it back a little bit, why We Got Power magazine is kind of the way it is. When my sister and I had moved into Santa Monica from Hermosa Beach, going through Marina and popping around a few different places, into Santa Monica, we found that Dave lived right around the block, became good friends. But at that time, and before that, Dave was already doing zines. He was doing Xerox zines, a thing called the Neighborhood Journal. And it was all stories and pictures and stuff about kids from the neighborhood. So he's already doing neighborhood zines and also shooting stuff in Super 8, once again with kids from the neighborhood, like skits and stuff like that. So by the time we kind of got through New Wave, you know, the Talking Heads and all that, and then into ska, and then finally glommed on to hardcore punk rock and the DIY do-it-yourself ethic, it just made sense to do a fanzine. And the time it particularly hit, we were sitting around, you know, in this guy Alan Gilbert's in his room, just listening to a tape. Dave, my sister, and Alan. You know, this tape had all kinds of crazy stuff on it, like Crass, Electric Eels, and like, hey, we should do a fanzine. And, you know, Dave already had the skills, and there you go.
Dave, you want to add to that?
I actually typed this out on a typewriter and and laid it out on cardboard. And Jordan and I would take photos, and we would marry the photos. Actually, I think that print is amongst the collection here, maybe not. I mean, that's where all of these photos come from. That time frame, that period from 81, 82, 83, which was sort of the peak hardcore. By the end of 83, we already sort of had moved sort of out of it. The scene really sort of shifted. Like I said, Desperate Teenage Love Dolls was really my sort of coming out of this world, going into another, in a sense. But, I mean, completely still formed by all of this. And this was just sort of really how we sort of grew up.
Here, I have another feature of We Got Power magazine that you really couldn't find in Maximum Rock and Roll or Flipside. We had mazes. We had connect the dots. We had mazes like help the punker find the safety pin. Oh, this one is pretty appropriate. Help the punk find the job. And also riot reviews, stuff like that. We had more of a sense.
There was a sense. There was definitely a sense of humor involved. It was definitely, if anything, was behind the zine it was more National Lampoon than Maximum Rock and Roll.
Of course, we dabbled near the political stuff, like this column here. What does anarchy mean to you? And who's the first person you ask? Steve-O from the Vandals, and he says, anarchy stands for freedom, and if you want to be free, order yourself an anarchy burger to go. Hold the government, please. Which, I guess that became lyrics to a song.
Well, I think that's a good transition into kind of the final question that'll be for the group is, and we can start with Jordan, is looking back now as older people.
Yes.
With different life.
Hey, we made it. We made it.
Different life experiences. What are your takeaways from being in the punk scene, and how did it influence the rest of your life?
Well, I still like the tunes. The music is great. It was a lot of fun, and I got to do stuff. Later, I started working in the tech industry, straight jobs, engineering, coding, scripting, building systems. But it was always great for me to do all of this other stuff, to have done and experienced all that stuff. And I could at least tolerate trying to hold down some relative straight job to pay the rent. Also, I guess kind of some of the themes still ring true today, like the Minutemen's tune "Little Man with a Gun in His Hand" is extremely appropriate as of last Saturday. Oh, but it was last Saturday anyway. So, and it's now it's all there. It's all easy to access. We can download it, listen to it, and I still shoot photos at gigs and stuff. And Dave is still making movies.
For me, the 20th century to now are such different worlds. It's really hard to juxtapose analog to digital, and what went on between the change between the two. This is where we're at now. We live in a completely different world. But to have all this experience in real life applicable situations, cutting, actually editing Super 8 film, splicing the film together. Before you were able to take the film and put it into a computer and edit it, you're actually editing the real product. Before, you could use graphics programs and Photoshop and everything else, actually doing hand-drawn artwork and all these, every single typeface you see here, I rubbed off with these little letraset little
had to
things.
line it up.
Yeah, you had to like, I mean, that's pretty good spatial, just doing it by eye, creating this type font. That you wanted it to look like, it was in a newspaper, but it was really a kid in a bedroom rubbing off letrasets to create this illusion of a headline. To have all this tactile, analog experience was super crucial for me, and it's really sort of how I learned to do things. Before, there was technology caught up and made, digital non-linear editing possible, or, whatever. I'm really stoked that, not only that, I mean, it's kind of hard not to have the kind of nostalgia for your youth and the time you grew up in. And I mean, for me, it just happened to coincide with this musical movement that is still looked upon and studied. It is like, not gonna, it has its place in history. You realize years later, you were in the middle of this. When at the time, you're a kid, you're just living life. You don't have that perspective. But to actually look back at it now, realize that you're a part of this history. And, for me, it's, pretty proud of the experience. And I couldn't imagine having lived any other way.
Dan, it's your turn.
What was the question again?
So the question is, looking back now, what are your takeaways from being in the punk rock scene, and how did it influence the rest of your life?
Well, I sort of, I just jumped on it because I was like consciously looking for any alternative to being, a housewife or a secretary, or like I just knew when I was really little I was never gonna fit in like straight world. And so punk rock was just, that was like, all my dreams came true, and then everything was turned to shit really fast. But like, no, I never really saw it. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one that like took it seriously. Like, the whole, like I never wanted to do anything else. I don't play punk rock anymore. I really even go to that many punk rock shows. But like, it's always been a part of like who I am and how I do things, and it's just. I can't. It kind of ruined me for polite society. Like because it was punk rock was like speak truth to power and like see through the bullshit, and like let's say you grew up in a house and like you don't know anything but the inside of that house, and then one day you get kicked out of the house and you see like the lawn is dead and there's bars on the window, and like you don't want to go back in that house. You're hanging out on the dead lawn. I don't know if that makes any sense. Okay, that's a shitty analogy, but no, it's like, it was groovy.
Perfect. Des?
Well, that was groovy. I feel individuality. I knew it before punk rock. And then when punk rock happened, they go, okay, teach me, I'm a musician. So teach me how to play with other people, even in the most simplistic form. I'm not that great of a guitar player, but I'm pretty good. And I'm still learning to this day. So it taught me about individuality, true, I'm not going to wave a flag here, true freedom to what we should aspire to in this country right now. And if I have to say anything political, please stand up to the bullshit that's going on in this country. Please be careful, because this is slowly coming at you. Not slowly, rapidly. We're in it. So I'd rather talk about Captain Beefheart or the Damned, but I'll leave you at that.
Got one, yeah, we're almost done, but I think Kevin's done a great job of moderating, and I have a question for him. When we were kind of chatting this thing up, you mentioned you knew Janet from high school, and she scared the fuck out of you. What was that all about? And are you still scared?
You should tell the story of Janet in grade school.
Oh, yeah. By the way, yes. Thank you all for coming to Pier Avenue Junior High School. Janet, and to take the edge off of that other story, Janet and I were in Miss Appleyard's sixth grade homeroom class. We sat at the same desk just like this, just at the next room over. That was the last year of Pier Avenue, and Janet and I had a great time. We learned a lot until she got kicked out for talking too much. It's fun. I got the upper hand now. Anyway, so go ahead. So she didn't look vicious to me, nor did you.
I mean, I think I was a sophomore or freshman going into my sophomore year, and we were new to the scene, and Janet was all in, from leather jacket to boots to buttons, and we were more, I guess, surf, jeans and t-shirts. But it was already scary being a punk in a high school that had some jocks who were just raging assholes. And it was nice actually confronting one a couple years ago and telling him, you were a fucking, just an asshole to me. And he apologized and all good.
Did they call you emo fag?
I was scared. I was a little, I was skinny with big ears, and I just loved being in the scene, but it's just the aura that Janet and her brother had on me and our little crew, just because she had the look. And I don't think we ever talked in high school, but it was just, but no, I want to thank everybody here for their words and their time, and I appreciate being invited as the moderator. But one thing I'd like to do is, if anyone has a question, ask away. Anyone?
Oh, I'm just wondering, while you guys were doing all this back in the day when you were very young, were you still doing homework and trying to do good in school?
No.
I had a .02 GPA at those times.
I was the epitome of an average student, maybe C-. School was boring. School pushed me into this. School and society. I blame society.
No. Great question.
Really quick, I was surprised to hear a lot of the discussion about Huntington Beach, which is a place where I grew up in the 80s and 90s, feeling very, very out of touch and hating Huntington Beach. I didn't know about what your experience was with Huntington Beach punk rockers. And
Yeah, Edison High School, right? That's
I didn't know it sucked that bad back then, but like, how did you deal with it? Like, could you tell it?
Well, I mean, you think Huntington Beach is awesome now? I don't.
I actually feel it feels great living up here now, and like knowing that you guys had the problems back then. But like, really, how could you tell an HBer from far away?
Well, I mean, in those days, they used to dress the same, and when they conformed to punk rock is supposed to be total freedom. And Black Flag,
Back then.
when we saw what was going on in Huntington Beach in their fashion, I started growing a beard like Frank Zappa and long hair, and we went like this to that because it wasn't about fun anymore in punk rock. It was more like you or your friend or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whoever is going to get his ass kicked because he looks like Sid Vicious. To them, that was like a hippie. If you look like Johnny Thunders or something, they were. Look, Orange County was a very Republican, strict place. So all those kids, still is, all those kids got frustrated with their parents, but learned they were jocks and they had that same mentality. They had the same mentality of going to a show and fucking people up. And it's not like fucking people up, it's fucking up the idea of stupidity about government and what's going on, especially right now. But it was more like, you're not like me, you're not from where I'm from, I'm coming to your place and I'm gonna fuck your place up.
Wow.
That's the way it was here.
I think a lot of, they also, the look was skinhead, motorcycle boots, chains, bandanas,
Plaid shirt.
and they were scary. I mean, the Cuckoo's Nest was a gnarly place, and you always felt unsafe.
Except on a Tuesday night for SSB.
But that was also
You still had to do with Mugger.
that was also part of the attraction to punk rock, was that the violence of the music. At least for me, it appealed to me. It was a perfect fit for.
It was better before, when you could stand wherever you wanted and dress however you wanted, and no one was gonna punch you in the back of the head.
It was a perfect place for an angry, alienated kid. And I think a lot of people back then had that feeling, and it was the perfect medicine. And it changed my life. And it's a very interesting retrospective in looking back and how we were fortunate to be part of history. And it's, I think we're very lucky. But yeah, the people in Huntington Beach were shitheads.
There's another question over here.
How people from Huntington Beach coming to the South Bay or to Hollywood, did you get a sense that being from the South Bay going to Hollywood, that you might have gotten the same treatment the way that you were seeing Huntington Beach?
Good question.
Not really.
No, but Hollywood kind of, at first, shunned the South Bay groups.
I think
They
still-
did. And because at the time, I think punk rockers in certain areas, wherever they're from, New York, it was their own little universe. So the Hollywood scene, until the last or Black Flag played up there, and it was hard for Black Flag to play the mask, but they did. But it was a little bit, but it was more like a soap opera type deal. It wasn't like fucking, violence or anything. It was like, at first, maybe John Doe did not like, Billy Zoom. John was pretty open. Billy Zoom didn't, who are these people from Hermosa? And Exene, but eventually they warmed up and they saw Black Flag and they go, wow, the band was good. And the other bands, Red Cross, you name it, Sacred, Minutemen, especially, so it took a while for the Hollywood scene to warm up to us here.
I mean, I think just to add to your point was, there was a different look in Hollywood. There was more kilts and makeup and leather and maybe slightly goth in a sense. It was simple. Jeans and a t-shirt, and we loved Black Flag. And that was, I think it was a simpler mentality. But I can see us being mixed with the, we just weren't as violent. But it's a very good question.
Hey, Jack has a question. Hey, I'm a friend of the Kirkwood brothers from my junior high and high school in Phoenix. But I'd be curious to hear your guys' early impression. They came over here for monitors and people like that. So I'm kind of curious to hear from you guys, like, what that looked like. Where are these guys? Next thing I knew, they were on SST and shit. I was like, wait, what?
We loved
so
them.
I'm kind of curious to hear what you guys thought, how that all came
We
together.
put the meat puppets in our fanzine in 1982 because we loved the meat puppets. And first time they came to LA, I think I saw them at it was either LA Press Club or Cadena Grand, and Chris was singing, and they were just this insane thrash band. They were like this just wall of noise, spastic vocal, crazy thing, which is you can hear on their very first EP in a car, and even the first album too. When Chris was sort of the frontman, before Kurt was just playing his guitar, but like we always loved the Meat Puppets, and we became intertwined with them very much early on. And every time they were in LA, we'd be there, and every time we were in Phoenix, we would hook up. And I don't know. I don't even really. I mean, I think Kurt just really loved the LA scene. I think Kurt was just really. He always said that every time he was here, he had the time of his life. That LA was just this wonderland, this Disneyland of fun for him. And there's something about the collective, body of work of that band and just everything that they did. A huge part of our life.
Yeah, and
I know Des has something to say.
Well,
the Meat Puppets.
one quick point about that. So in 2012, when the We Got Power book was released, we did a gallery show at Trek 16 Gallery in Santa Monica, and we had an opening show with the Adolescents and the Last in Saccharin and a few other bands, White Flag. But for the closing show, we were able to have the Meat Puppets come in and play for free, and that's what some of the Meat Puppets pictures that are flashing up. Also Middle Class and Frank. So yeah,
Well, I don't really know what I'm going to say about the Meat Puppets that's already been said. What's really interesting about that band is from In a Car to their later stuff on the musical progression of those people. And they'll just sit there and take their LSD and smoke their weed and go, I don't know what I'm doing. And I go, what are you, nuts? You know what you're doing, and they're wonderful. Wonderful band. And punk rock is the freedom of the heart. And that they are the true masters of that. The freedom of their heart, what they want to do, how they do it, with conviction. Meat Puppets.
Any other questions? I think just go for it.
My name's Jack. I'm just curious, like you guys basically, being pioneers in the early punk scene and stuff in LA and all that. What were you guys first, thoughts on UK 82 hardcore coming over bands like Discharge and Exploit and GBA, UK Subs, and that kind of stuff coming over here and implementing what was going on over here?
Some of that stuff was really good. Discharge, was way into them. Not all of it. I mean, we loved the UK Subs. We loved. I mean, like, to me, a band like The Exploited was just kind of like, I never bought it. It was just like cartoon punk.
Except they have one really good tune I think is appropriate to these days. It's called Hitler's in the Charts Again.
But
So on YouTube, give it a spin.
to me, there was so much great music that came out of England in punk and post-punk, and we were clued in. We were more students or children of Wire, X-Ray Specs, Eater. Who else?
Oh, Buzzcocks.
Buzzcocks. I mean, so much. To me, that's England. That's like Motorhead,
Stranglers,
Clash. Oh my God! I listened to that first Clash record every single day before going to school. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad I met Joe Strummer and I got to tell him that. But at any rate, yeah, I mean, a lot of that second or third wave British punk stuff, it was a mixed bag. Like some of it, not all.
The thing for me was that the records were too expensive. So because they all had to be imported. So.
We used to tape Rodney.
Oh yeah. I did tape some good stuff off of Rodney and from the Maximum Rock and Roll Radio.
We had the cassettes, and Rodney was on, and so before we ended up buying the Eater single or whatever the fuck, Wire, we'd tape Rodney, and he would have it before it was even here in California. And we would take acid and take the bus to Zed Records in Long Beach.
Yay.
And it would be like 2 in the afternoon, and we're like flying high. They're going, I can only afford this Black Randy single. Anyway, that's
Okay, your next question.
That was my youth.
Okay, and then what about the other way, like say the anarcho-punk bands, like Rudimentary Peanut?
Dude,
Crass, Rudimentary Piano, yeah.
Bands is like the English hand.
So the Shoebox Punk tape we were listening to
They
and
have no idea what
decided.
that means. Why don't you tell me?
Okay, so that,
I used to make cassettes were such an important part of cassettes are how we communicated. Yeah.
and you'd make compilations on
So-
cassettes.
Sorry to the guy in the Black Flag shirt. I know you've been patiently waiting to add it.
Wait, but hold on a second.
Go.
But one bit about anarcho-punks. When the compilation tape that we were listening to when we decided to do We Got Power magazine had the Crass tune Bloody Revolutions on there. Another amazing tune. Yeah, Crass, insane.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could give a little history on Spot. You know, I know he was part of the scene, you know, he was a photographer, he took those famous Pollywog Park.
None of this music would have happened without Spot.
Right, he was kind of a bass player in Panic or Black Flag.
Tell us about Spot.
Produced Black Flag, but you don't hear a lot of them. Where did he come from? Did he come from the Strand? Did he work with SST before they were a label?
I do have, Spot had done some gallery shows of his photography at the Pacific Coast Gallery here, right off of Pier Avenue, and also at a place called Subliminal Projects in San Pedro. At Subliminal Projects in San Pedro, I was able to do a walkthrough interview with Spot because that show showed his whole life history. So if you look on YouTube for, I think it's Spot at Subliminal Projects, I have an interview there so you can get a lot of his, some of his history.
Well, I can give you a little bit of insight on that there, Jordy.
Go for it.
Spot, you know the guy in Santa Monica, who's the guy who plays the Stratocaster and skates?
Harry Perry.
I know Spot, he was before him. And Spot was a photographer. He used to take pictures of the girl volleyball players. And he's a reader.
Roller skaters.
Roller skaters.
He was a roller skater.
He was a roller skater, but he would take pictures of all the skaters on the Strand. And he was also a great musician that nobody knew. He worked at Media Art over on Pier Avenue. Hermosa Avenue, used to be. And he was an amazing musician and met up with Greg somehow. He was like a misfit, like all of us. He had amazing talent, and he was just an amazing individual. He couldn't stop, like his energy, he couldn't stop. And it wasn't drugs. He could not stop his energy. And when he felt the energy of the bands like Sacred Trust, Black Flag, Minutemen, he would just light up even more like 10 Christmas trees. He was amazing. Where he came from? Hermosa. I think his family is from
Leimert Park.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's over on the other side of the hill. Over there. Yeah, Leimert Park. And he got locked in the house. He was working at Media Art for 2 days straight. I don't know if he took drugs or speed or whatever, but mixing something. He went to his house and they were fumigating. So he went to the house and he got locked in the house and they fumigated the house. And with him inside him, and he was in the middle of it and he broke out of it. And he goes, well, Deso, I think it's permanent damage.
Hey, we should finish this, wrap this up, but we do have some merch, and also we'll be hanging out to bullshit for a while, maybe spin some tunes, but we have some merchandise that's available. There are a few of these original, we got Power Number 4s for $20. There's some Desperate Teenage Love Dolls DVDs, which have Robert Hecker as the singing Paperboy, and of course Janet as Patch Price, Patch Kelly. And there's a portrait of Robert up front, and then of course we got Power books. There's photos of Spot, stories about Spot, Descendants, Black Flag. 5 members of Black Flag write pieces for it, including Deso. So the book's $40. Such a deal, and then you can get them to sign it as well. So, but hey, as Mike Long would say, thank you to all the geek goers. Thank you for coming and hanging out and putting up with all this long-winded stuff. Thank you, and maybe Kevin Salk.